people can start losing weight just by making better decisions.
Motivation is driven from the inside out.
Use flexibility as a tool. Rely on structure when it's helpful.
This is where we discuss the possibilities.
Hey guys, welcome to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. Today we're talking about motivational mastery. And Kori, what topic did you want to talk about today?
I'd like to chat, Joe, about hustle, actually.
I thought you were going to say that. Not that we have rehearsed this or anything.
No.
But, okay, so we're going to talk about hustle. And it's interesting because I'm talking to Miss 4.0, Miss Valedictorian, Miss Full Ride Scholarship, Miss PhD, Miss 3 earned pro cards, Miss I can deadlift 4 times my body weight. So, Dr. Propst, tell us all about hustle.
So, okay, here's my beef with hustle, okay? There's a massive difference between prioritization and choosing what you want to be essential in your life and focusing on very meaningful things and hustling around in a real hurried way. Like, here's the impression that I get when all of these gurus and peak performance people are saying like, oh, sleep when you die. Like,
Are you quoting me? I'm sure I've never said that.
I hate that so much. I know you value sleep. Like, I ask you about your sleep and you're like, yeah, I got 8 hours last night. You have said that though. And there have been periods in my life too where I'm averaging like 5 or 6. When I was working on my PhD, I was doing that. That's it. I mean, bare bones, ground level, that's not healthy. But I think as a culture, people are getting this message that they need to go, 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 hard, hard, hard. And it's not an intentional hustle. So I accomplished all that stuff, but it was very intentional. I was reflecting and thinking through like, wait, what's actually meaningful right now? What's actually going to get me to a point with purpose, right? And so we're creating this, it's just, how do I want to say it? I get really fired up about it because I have a lot of clients who they're like, I want to do this and I need to do that. And everyone says that I should go in this direction. And I'm like, whoa, breathe. Like, we need to slow down first and decide what's actually important here. What are your intentions? And what's motivating you? What everyone else says you should be doing? Or what actually is in line with your values and the things that are going to help you progress in a meaningful way? So, man, I could go on forever. I'm going to stop now.
Well, I don't know how to tell you this, but while I was on a college campus in Pittsburgh over the weekend, I actually applied for 2 new educational programs, or at least requested information. So, and now I feel like maybe I should not hustle so much after this, this
okay.
pep talk.
So you and I then need to have a conversation business-wise about
That's how I'm breaking the news to you.
Right?
Figured I wouldn't get yelled at if it's in a podcast.
I'm maybe a little nicer. Yeah.
Okay, so here's an interesting thing when you brought up this topic. In the very recent past, just this year, as my 4th child has moved into high school, almost driving, she's done with her first year, I'm finding life quite different. I have, kids out of college, 1, out of high school, and I sacrificed a lot of opportunity for 20 years. I would only travel once a month. I turned down trips. I would not travel during the summer because I wanted to spend that time with my kids. And now I have more freedom. But as I look back, I think, my gosh, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I was hustling, but at the same time, I put some boundaries and restraints on that so that I could live the life I wanted to. But how quickly we can say, well, bad me. Why didn't I do more back then when I actually made the conscious decision to live with more intent?
Mm-hmm.
So I just find it very, very interesting that even when you're making the right decisions to pull back a little bit, you almost feel that guilt that, man, but what if I would have done this? What if I could have done it all?
Yeah, I thought of the word that came to mind when you were talking about how the approach you took then was methodical. And I think we can hustle in a very methodical way because we've thought through what's actually important here. At that time in your life, your kids were growing up. You wanted to be there as their father and mold them and shape them and influence them. And so you were cognizant. And this is what I'm not seeing from people now. And yeah, I mean, we can look back and say, why didn't I then? But then it comes back to, and you and I have talked about this before, are we even asking ourselves the appropriate questions in that case? What's that question going to lead to? Guilt, shame, disappointment? Why? Why would we go there? And that's part of this whole hustle thing with me is there's a lack of awareness with it. And part of that too comes from the intense level of comparison that I feel like so many individuals who are just maybe getting started in business, or they're just out of college and they're like, I don't know what to do yet. Like, what direction should I go in? What should I prioritize? And I feel like we're perpetuating extremes when we say, just go try everything, fail as many times as you need to, and fail fast and fail hard, fail now and fail forward. Like that's not reflective. It's not focused. It's not drilling down into what's really meaningful to me. It's not asking, how do I want to contribute to the world? It's all about just doing, checking things off the list. And as we've been in business together for well over 10 years now, and the industry has changed and we're having to move in different directions and concentrate on different things, like it could be very easy for us to get bogged down in gotta do everything, like all the social media channels, and we have to learn this and this, and we're trying to coach, and we're trying to mentor all of our Diet Doc owners. Like at some point you burn out, and research even shows people who are operating at peak performance, okay, sleep is a huge correlate to that. It's the second correlate to that. They are sleeping on average 8 hours a day. Why? Because we know sleep means we're going to have greater clarity, greater focus, greater cognitive processing, greater problem solving skills, a greater level of awareness. No sleep means we're basically operating like we're drunk. And if we truly want an intentional hustle, then that takes awareness, which comes from actually recovering and scheduling that into our priorities.
Yeah, and I always go back to a metaphor like stopping to sharpen your axe, how much more productive you are. That's why I not only value sleep, even though, a norm for me might be 6 to 7 hours and then catching up with 8 on a weekend day or something. But, this trip I mentioned in Pittsburgh, it was quite literally unannounced. I didn't tell anybody I was doing this. It was a conference I wanted to go to, and it was just to unplug. I was going there to this writing conference, and when I got there, I was talking to some people, and I said, yeah, this is just for me to refill the gas tank. Like, I need this. But then I was able to transition it into something that I thought was productive. I got to meet and spend a lot of time with a couple agents there and all that good stuff. But let me say this to you, and then I want to use it as a platform to discuss how to live a more intentional life, still accomplishing and hustling, but in some kind of a controlled way. So I was having a conversation I think it was this morning with somebody about, or reflecting on a conversation I had recently where somebody was talking about just, sales, do this. And really it was getting almost kind of sleazy. Like, it's just all about getting that buck.
Yeah.
And I had this thought, I've lived my life so far this way, putting my own principles and wants as a human being on top of that priority, that I would truly rather just give it all up and be homeless and yet say I've lived the life I want. It's not all about some kind of gain, but I've got to say, back on my dad platform with kids who have approached college, gone to college, not gone to college, you're always pulled in both directions. You want to say, come on, man, it's the law of the jungle. You've got to go out there and get yours. You're either the prey or the predator. And then you also want to say, no, wait, just be happy, live, be self-actualized, do this. But then you're thinking, gosh, what, you have to have both of those.
Yeah.
So Kori, Dr. Propst.
Yes.
How can you assure yourself that you can be happy toggling between those two spaces? Because I don't think this is a case where you can truly have it all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think a lot of it comes down to understanding happiness, which we could do a whole other podcast on. From a money perspective, let's just talk a little bit about what the research shows. Anyone who earns above $70,000 isn't any more happy. I think that's a pretty big deal. All of us are hustling to try to make more money, and it doesn't really change how happy we are. Now, what does it afford us? It affords us the ability to do more things for more people. And if contributing and being in service to others is really important to us, guess what? That's gonna bring us happiness. So if we're gonna hustle for money, then we need to be thinking about beyond the actual earning and what we're gonna do with that. But so there's the happiness piece, and then there's if we want to hustle and we need to be able to toggle between both extremes, then this is about kind of wrapping our brains around what's essential here and making one piece of that essential thing reflection. Just a teeny bit of time each day or once a week where we ask ourselves, what are my intentions? What am I working to move closer to, and how? And am I really engaging my time as wisely as possible? And what energy is that providing me? Like if I feel just contracted and worn down and I'm getting really freaking pessimistic and pissed off, and no, that's not the energy that we want to carry into the world. That's a really good indicator that we need to slow down and kind of process why we're doing this in the first place. The hustle in that case isn't getting us to a generative place.
So what I hear you saying is that, again, it comes down to the value of a well-crafted spreadsheet where you can track your input into these goals, because I mean, to be quite honest,
it's an output. It is.
Yeah. If you have something visual, if you just come to some decision in your brain saying, I'm going to be happier doing this, or I'm going to pull back from this, or I'm going to hustle more here, it evaporates so quickly in your mind under the weight of all the busyness. So if you can say, here are some decisions I'm going to make toward that goal, and then have those reflection points, like you said, I think is very valuable.
Yeah, and I think there are different ways that the images could look for different people. Our spreadsheets look vastly different.
Mine are more symmetrical and orderly.
Mine are probably a little bit more haphazard. Like I've sent you mine, and you're like, no freaking way, dude. Are we using
lots of colors and stuff happening everywhere?
But that's how I want to live. Like I want to live vibrantly, right? And in a colorful world.
Exactly.
But still very smartly, yes. And you know, we're the diet doc. And so if we look at this from the perspective of a weight loss goal, yes, tracking can help because it gives us information about where we're spending our time and are we seeing the results that we're actually working toward, or are we getting something else from it that maybe we didn't anticipate? Maybe it's good, but maybe it's not.
Yeah, no, I think to 2 points. I've talked to counselors, marriage therapists. I've read books on the topic, and everybody has some version of this. If you are working toward a goal in your relationship, you've got to have something like a weekly check-in. So it's like, okay, we don't have to sit here and overanalyze things and beat each other to death over this, but let's just have this occasional check-in. And it's no different with these personal goals. If you just make goals like you're sticking things up on the refrigerator and everywhere you go, it's just like there's no order to that. And I don't want to sound like that's everything, but it does give you something to look at that has some tangibility, and you can really mark your progress.
Yeah, you can. If we're in a situation where it's like you said, like sticky note, sticky note, sticky note every day, all the time, everywhere, it can feel really overwhelming, and it's just too ambiguous. I love the relationship example because I had this conversation literally with my partner where here's Kori, really concerned about relationships, don't want a normal relationship, wants an exceptional relationship, right? Partner has heard this, it's very, very clear. And so it's like, it's front and center all the time for me. So for me to like verbalize it all the time, every time we're together, he's like, whoa, like stop, this is so overwhelming. And for me, it's just second nature. So I'm like, I could go to this place, I could go to, you just don't care, do you? Like, you just don't care. This is all me. I'm going to do all the work. No, it wasn't that at all. It was, honey, like, can we just sit, here's what would work for me. Like, we sit down for an hour, however long you want, an hour and a half, and we talk about it and we get things figured out. But for it to bleed into every single thing we're doing, like, no, it takes away the joy. And I get it. And I think we can relate that to our goals too. Like, have a set methodical check-in with yourself and then do the work.
Yeah. And I visualize this as kind of a priority chain or tree. I remember a friend of mine who maybe 10 years ago was really trying hard to build a business, and it was going to be something that he had to add a lot of value to clients as a consultant. And so he made it a goal. I'm going to read 1 book a day for a year. Wow. So it wasn't just a goal like I'm going to give it a shot. It's on a chart. Here's March 1st, March 2nd, March 3rd. Here are the books I'm going to read, lined it up. And if you don't do that, it's very difficult. So that was the one area that he thought as a priority he wanted to hustle, and that's great. But that comes at a cost to other things that you have to say, maybe down here on number 4. I'm gonna give myself a break and not make it quite as pressing.
Yes, absolutely. And I work with my clients on this all the time. I know you do too. When we say yes to something and we're giving that a very meaningful yes, I'm doing this, there are things that we are saying no to.
There's a cost. Yeah, there's a cost.
There is a cost, absolutely. And a lot of people make the mistake in not assessing what those costs are. Something falls apart here, something kind of goes away there, and then they're blindsided and surprised. And I think there are always going to be surprises. There are things are going to happen that we don't necessarily expect, but we can ask ourselves the question, okay, if I am truly going to put my effort and energies here, what do I need to consider isn't going to get so much of my attention now? And talk to the people who are closest to you because they're the ones who might be affected.
So for me, an action item, a first step for our listeners and viewers would be to create visually some kind of a list, some kind of spreadsheet, no joking on that one, where you could say there is a cost, and so here's the cost I'm willing to pay, and I have to have that visual representation. What would you say a first step, maybe even before that, would be to really try and merge these two worlds?
Good question. I think it's going to be different for everyone, but I mean, a question that I ask myself a lot is, what's my intention here? A simple example, I could spend 10 hours a day trying to learn Instagram, but is that connected with and aligned with my true intention of taking care of my clients and servicing them in the best way possible? Because that leads to a whole host of other things that are going to build our business and our brand in a much bigger, broader, more contributory way. Does that make sense? So
No.
No.
Well, let me ask a different way. I want to leave our audience, because this is a very important topic, and everybody is burned out in some area, or they feel frustrated. They just can't do it all. The world is expecting this. We're, especially in our culture, in our economic paradigm that we're currently in, everybody's having to do more with less. So how would you say, because speaking about hustle, look at that, getting a call right in the middle of a podcast. So how would you say, man, this is where you need to start? And it could be something very conceptual,
okay,
but
got it. I know what I want to say. I want to say this. We are going to graphically, we can do it graphically because Joe says this is the awesome way to do it. Assess where we're spending our time. Okay, that would be the first thing I would do. Where's my time going? Am I spending 2 hours a day scrolling through Facebook? And yet you're telling me you don't have time to do this side hustle that's really important to you, or you don't have time to track your food. Okay, bare bones, we are going to track 24 hours of your day, everything that you're engaging in. And we're going to see what's falling off the table that you've said is important to you.
It's powerful.
Thanks. I needed a little coaxing to get that out.
That's right. And the other thing you did that was interesting was, no joking, about 30 seconds before you said you used the Instagram thing, I thought, as a close to this podcast, I wanted to mention that, because, every time we're saying, hey, click here, subscribe there, do this, do that. And I hate being cheesy, but I know most people are now communicating via Instagram or getting information there. So I want to let people know that our Instagram account is the Diet Doc Weight Loss.
Yes.
So @ or hashtag the Diet Doc Weight Loss. I have one that I don't necessarily use for personal use. It's still kind of businessy, but I get a little bit more personal there. And it's Joe Klemczewski, just my name. So that's the one thing, guys. If you want to connect with us, that's a great place to get the fun and the motivational business type stuff. But I want to thank you for watching this Life Mastery podcast, especially on the topics of motivational mastery, where we dig into all of the psych-related things that can help you live your best life.
Thank you, guys. It's been fun. Thanks, Joe.